Hello, everyone. I am Mary Parr, and welcome to Bread Culture. I am here to teach you how you can make your own organic sourdough whole grain bread in the comfort of your own home. I am a physician of Eastern medicine, and I'm an herbalist and acupuncturist, and my focus is on nutrition. I realized after years of having digestive upset and issues, I couldn't eat bread anymore. And a friend of mine said, well, why not try going gluten-free? And so I went gluten-free for a little bit of time, for a few months, and I was feeling a little bit better, a little less digestive upset, but I started to have no energy. And I also noticed that weird things were happening, like my hair was starting to fall out, I was losing tons of weight, and it wasn't a natural thing. Then I went to France, and I was able to eat everything there. I want to say that I'm not referring to celiac disease, which is an autoimmune condition that affects 1 to 2% of the population, where they're not able to actually digest gluten proteins. What I'm talking about is gluten intolerance and gluten allergies. I thought that I had that. I spent a couple years not eating gluten, but then when I went to France, I was able to eat everything there, and I came home determined to figure out why. So I came back from France with a 10-pound bag of flour, and I started baking. At the time, I was still in acupuncture school, and now I'm a physician of Eastern medicine. But what I realized was how many people, not just myself, but thousands of other people in our country, were getting all of these different symptoms in relationship to eating gluten. And that became my mission, to help people understand how they could eat bread again. And what I realized was it wasn't about using a bread machine and commercial yeast. It was about creating sourdough bread with a wild yeast sourdough starter, because I realized that the longer that it fermented, the more digestible it was. The breads that we see on our grocery store shelves, they are filled with what's called phytic acid. And that is not good for us. We don't want more phytic acid. What we want is lactic acid. The longer you ferment the bread, the more lactic acid there is. Our digestive tracts are filled with lactic acid. The more that we're replenishing ourselves with that, the happier our digestion is, and therefore the happier our skin is, the happier our energy is. There's so many different things that this sourdough bread does for our health and for our vitality. So a lot of you are probably wondering, why whole grains? Why does it have to be whole grains? And the reason is that there are 3 parts of a whole grain: the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. In commercial breads, only the endosperm is there, and the endosperm is pretty much all starch. It's like 85% starch, and then some vitamins and minerals, but really not that nutritious. Versus the bran and the germ, they are chock full of vitamins and minerals. They're filled with iron and trace minerals like magnesium and calcium, and it's so important and so vital to having great bread, is that's where you get the nutrition. The reason why they take them out during the milling process is because they have a short shelf life. So the bran and the germ, they don't last very long. So the bread that you have on the grocery store shelves can be there a couple months, which is kind of scary. The really important thing is that you're using organic flour. That's the key, because we don't want to use grains that have been possibly sprayed with glyphosate and other pesticides. They're not good for us either. We want to feed ourselves and our families and friends with the most nutritious bread that we can. In the Eastern medicine that I practice, we use a term called Jing, Jing. It's used in reference to our energy and our life force and our vitality. And when we're digesting food that doesn't have this life force and this energy, we have none of that. We need to eat bread that is full of life force, that's full of vitality, that's full of jing. And I feel like the commercial bread is practically dead. And we need to eat bread that is alive. We deserve to be able to eat food that is full of vitality and energy and that sustains our life force. It is our birthright. Another piece of the incredibly important part of sourdough bread is the wild yeast starter. It is essential to creating healthy bread at home, and it's not that hard to make. I'm going to teach you a foolproof, easy way of making a culture because sometimes people get intimidated by that and it's understandable, but it's only 2 ingredients. It's just your whole grain flour and water. And over the course of a few days of feeding this whole grain flour and water over and over again, the wild yeast bubbles begin to proliferate and grow. And what's so important about the wild yeast culture is that it's filled with what's called lactobacillus and other types of healthy bacteria. Lactobacillus is a bacteria that's found in our digestive tracts, just like the lactic acid that I talked about earlier. And it lines our digestive tracts and it is all over our skin and hands. And it creates a very healthy boundary and healthy immune system. And so the more we eat this lactobacillus bread, the happier our digestion is, the happier our skin is, and the happier energy we have. So we've talked about 2 ingredients so far, the whole grain flour and the yeast. And then there are 2 more. We've got filtered water and sea salt. And that's it, just 4 ingredients. And then, of course, if you want to add other things like herbs or olives or cinnamon, raisin, all that good stuff, I'll tell you about when you do that. But it's super simple, just the 4 ingredients. That's it.